A superhuman is someone who is self-aware and is always offering their best self to the world. The goal of the Superhuman Project is to empower growth-minded professionals with insights on career management, job search, workplace productivity, and the future of work. In essence, it's about learning how to become the best version of ourselves. In each episode, I will invite guests from different disciplines and unpack how they achieved their career success, how they became the best version of themselves, and what are they doing to stay on top of their game. Let's jump in. Hello everyone. So we have today one of my favorite authors, Maribeth Kuzmeski, and Maribeth and I met almost 8 or 9 years ago. And this is when I read her book called The Connectors, How the World's Most Successful Business People Build Relationships. Relationship building and networking is something that I'm big upon. And I always like to talk to people and know from authors like Maribeth what are there some of the tricks for introverts or people like me who would like to connect with business leaders or folks who are outside their network and build a strong network. So I'll let Maribeth introduce herself. Maribeth, why don't you go
Okay,
ahead?
so I'm Maribeth Kuzmeski. I am the president of Red Zone Marketing, which is a marketing consulting firm located in the Chicago area. I have been in business for a long time. I like to say 15 plus years because it makes me sound not so old, but I've been in the business for a long time. We do marketing strategy and marketing consulting primarily for the financial services industry. We help them build their businesses, grow their client base, and ultimately it's about business development. So one of the most important things that we've seen is that the most successful, no matter if they're an introvert or an extrovert, are really good at connecting. And, I'm working in more of a sales organization. You're working with a bunch of salespeople, but they're really good at connecting. And so that's one of the reasons that I wrote the book called The Connectors. It wasn't the first book I wrote, and it wasn't the last book I wrote, but it was definitely my most popular book that I wrote. They've translated that into a bunch of different languages, including Chinese, which I thought interesting. But yeah, everyone needs to know sort of how to connect.
Yeah. So I know when I reached out to you with the concept of Superhuman Project. So at Superhuman Project, we started this community or this initiative, one definitely to help people or folks who are impacted by the pandemic in helping them switch careers or find jobs. But also, I believe that a lot of us are stuck in one profession, one job, and they do not know how to get out of that. So it's not always about climbing the corporate ladder, it's also about jumping the ladder. And the initiative focuses on getting into the mind of famous and successful authors, people like you, to understand what would it take to get out of that rut? What would it take to jump from one ladder to another ladder? So let me ask you this. When I shared with you the concept of Superhuman Project, what was your reaction?
Well, my reaction was, yes, this is awesome. I love this because I think it is what people need right now. And I think that a lot of people have done things like this. They don't even think about the fact that they have done things like this. They don't think of it maybe as superhuman. But if you're going to do a career change, if you're going to really jump from one thing to another, it's a major responsibility. It's a major undertaking. And let's say you have a family and you're supporting your family. How can you do that? How can you just jump careers? And you mentioned something before about how do you connect with people? How do you reach out to these business people? And I think You do it exactly the way you do it. You just reach out. It's amazing how many people say yes. I still have students from Syracuse University, where I went to undergrad, that will reach out to me and say, hey, I'm interested in getting into marketing. And I'll help them find jobs and all of that. But if they never reached out, there's no way I could have ever helped them. But one of the things that I did, which was the hardest thing that I ever did, and I didn't think I would get through it, was I got my PhD around the age of 50. And so that was really incredibly difficult. But I knew that at some point, I didn't want to run a business and travel all over the world. Who knew that I wouldn't be traveling all over the world because of a pandemic? But, I spent every week on the road, traveling and speaking and consulting and doing all of that. And I thought, well, if I don't ever want to do that, if at some point I don't want to do that anymore, I'd like to teach at the university. But to teach at a university, you really have to have a PhD. And so that's what I wanted to get. I didn't want to get a DBA, I wanted to get a PhD. And so it was quite an undertaking. And I did it while I was working nights and weekends, and for 3 years, nights and every night, every weekend, for 3 years. So it was an undertaking, but if you put your mind to it, you can do anything. But I think it's nice to have that cross-pollinating, like I'm doing this thing, but I'm also doing this thing. And maybe at some point they come together or come apart, but I'm working in two things in parallel. So yeah, it's superhuman is, I wouldn't call myself superhuman by any stretch of the imagination, but sometimes you do things that seem sort of superhuman, like get a PhD when you're 50.
No, yeah, from my perspective, you definitely are superhuman. You are part of the community, and you mentioned something which lot of us, go through. Like you mentioned, getting a PhD at the age of 50. Now, I know a lot of people who got impacted, their jobs were impacted by the pandemic. There was another guest whose job was impacted by the pandemic. He was with that employer for more than 14, 15 years. So overnight he was let go. And especially folks who are experienced, who have been in the industry for long, they're always they are always thinking how to make that switch. What is the how to find time for making the switch, having courage to make the switch. I know a lot of people give excuses like I'm old, or I do not have the right formal education to get into that particular field I want to get into. So could you walk us through your mind, what was going through your mind when you decided that you want to complete your PhD, and how did you overcome those excuses or fears that were stopping you?
Well, I always had it in my mind that I wanted to do it at some point, but wanting to do something and actually doing it are two completely different things. And so for a couple of years, I did research on different schools that taught, in the business school, a PhD program, and, had a PhD program, but had one for executives. And the reason that was important to me is because I wasn't in any position to quit my job and go back to school and not earn any income for 5 years, which is typically what a PhD student does. So I found this program. It was the first in the nation. It was an executive PhD program at Oklahoma State, of all places. I'd been to Oklahoma speaking and things like that, but I'd never really known much about Oklahoma. So I check out this. I go to some of their meetings. I attend one of their research workshops, and I realized this is what I want to do. Number one, it was expensive. And so I'm like, okay, well, am I willing to do this? Number two, I knew that I would have to do it while I was still working. And it was something where nights and weekends, and we would go to residency once a month for 3 years. So it was a huge undertaking. I knew it was going to be both financially, both from the amount that I had to pay for the PhD program, but also the income that maybe I was going to lose by spending a lot of time in this PhD program as opposed to consulting and maybe writing another book or something like that. And so I really had to weigh all those options. But this one, this was the only school in the nation that had this kind of a program where they took into account your years of experience. You had to have 15 years of experience, you had to have an MBA, and you had to have access to data. So in a PhD program, you're doing research. But if you have no access to data, which most young people just coming out of their MBA program don't necessarily have access to data. So, but I did. And so I was able to get accepted into the program, and then I started it. And it was the hardest thing I've ever done, by far, the hardest thing I've ever done. When I got my MBA, I didn't even walk through graduation. When I got my PhD, I went through graduation. I walked through graduation. I did it. I was like, I can't even believe that I got through this. But I did. And so sometimes you just have to put your mind to it and figure out, how am I going to do it? Can I give up my nights and weekends? And a lot of people would say, no, I can't give up my nights and weekends. I also gave up my favorite thing. I'm from Wisconsin. My favorite thing is drinking beer. I had to give up drinking beer for 3 years so that I could get through this program, because there was no way that I had to be sharp all the time. One beer and I'm not sharp. So I would have to be sharp all the time. And those are the kinds of big sacrifices I made.
Sacrificing beer for 3 years is definitely a big sacrifice. Now,
So
now we want to utilize your expertise in building connections and network. So, what's your advice to people who are looking for a job or who were impacted by the pandemic? Where is it they can start? Maybe they believe that they do not have any network, and they are looking for direction as to where to start. What's your advice to them?
Well, LinkedIn is the most beautiful place in the world to start building a network. If you don't have a network, you can go to LinkedIn and find anyone who's basically in business. If they're even some of the biggest CEOs in the world have a LinkedIn profile. So, but if you want to develop your network, go find people that you want to be like, or that you want to position like, and LinkedIn is the best place to start. And the other thing is, find your list of people that you really like to talk to and shoot big. Like, if I could only talk to this person for 10 minutes, I'd ask them questions about this and this and this. Make that list of people and begin a strategy for reaching out to them. And sometimes that strategy is simply, you find their email and you reach out, or you reach out on LinkedIn and you give an authentic plea. One of the things is, authenticity is one of the most important things about connecting. If you try to be all, super professional, like, no, I'm going to tell you my story. I'm going to tell you where I'm at. And I hope that you respond. And the authenticity is what makes connecting successful. Those that try too hard to say every word correctly and do everything right are, sometimes it just looks it's like doing a video that you record in a studio and it's all scripted and everything is just perfect. Or you do a video kind of like we're doing today, where it's not perfect, but you get to learn a little bit about the actual person, because people are not perfect.
Yeah, I know. And given that we are sales professionals, we are used to cold calling or prospecting and reaching out to different contacts. But a lot of folks I know, they do not know where to start. And your advice: create a list of folks that you would like to reach out to and have a LinkedIn profile, reach out to them. Now, my question to you would be, let's say I have a list of folks I want to connect with, and they are all big shots. So, do you have any tips or tricks in terms of what is it that I can write in my message to reach out to them so that they respond?
Yeah, again, it's authentic, and everyone's situation is different. I always like to have a what's in it for them. And so, starting off with a compliment, or the way that you have watched this person's career or something like that, but being super authentic about how you respect this person, and you've watched them and you've seen them do X, Y, and Z. And then your plea is, I only ask for this. I would love to have 10 minutes of your time to talk about how you got to where you're at in your career. And 10 minutes is never 10 minutes. It's always longer than that. But if you have a small amount of time that you say, hey, what if we did this? Now, it works great now, because you don't have to say, let's go out for coffee or let's meet, I'll come to your office. No, everything is virtual now. And so a quick Zoom call with somebody, I mean, I do it. I do it all the time with people that are looking for jobs. Well, now I'm working at a university also while I'm in my Red Zone marketing career. So I'm kind of doing both at the same time, but I love to help students find jobs. And the only students that I can help find jobs are the ones that reach out to me. And so I would have no fear about reaching out to somebody, because what if they don't respond? Well, you're the same place you were before. So why not at least try it and tell your story, tell your why in short order, and, and give it a shot. I mean, that's all you can do.
No, yeah, that's very helpful. In terms of, coming up with a list. Now, sometimes I tell people that everybody should, especially somebody who's looking for a job, they should look at their strengths, the kind of projects or activities they like, and then match it with a list of companies or job titles that they want to go after. And then, based on those job titles, they should look at folks on LinkedIn who have that kind of a job title and then reach out to them. And that's where they can start connecting with the people who are their idols in terms of the kind of job they want to do. Now, I would like to understand from you. Let's say I have a list of 10, 20 people. I reach out to them on LinkedIn and I find 10 minutes with them. I know it's very absurd if I just talk to them and ask them for a job. What is your advice in terms of having a conversation? And like in sales, we say that the purpose of one meeting is to get next meeting. So how do you connect with the person and then have try to build a continuing relationship with that person?
Yeah. So I mean, again, it's being authentic and honest and saying, the job that you have is I think the job that I would like to have. Tell me a little bit about your job. And so you're not asking them to hire you. You're asking them about the job and what it entails. And then you tell them, wow, this is exactly what I think I could be doing. What would you suggest for me? Is there anyone that I could reach out to or anything that I could do to get closer to a particular job? Is there other skills that I need? And I would ask that question. And then, you're going to have that conversation. But at the end, you say something like, would it be okay if I reach out to you and just let you know what's happened maybe in a month from now? And they say yes. And so, then you can schedule something else. And, I do agree having that next meeting is really important, or having them lead you to someone else that you could speak to. Because sometimes you might be speaking to the wrong person and you don't necessarily want to or need to speak to them again, but maybe they refer you to somebody else that you should talk to, which happens a lot. And then you're talking to that person, but you always have something in the works.
No, yeah, that's very helpful. Referrals. I always advise folks to ask for referrals, ask for connections from the folks you are talking to in their network who might be helpful. So that's a very good advice. Now, in terms of moving on, just want to know from your perspective for job search. I always find people, like, I call them old school versus the new generation. Old school, I find a lot of people still focused on mass applying. Just look for a job, upload your resume, and then apply. And then they just sit back, and they wait to hear from the company contact or HR to contact them. What is your thought process about that approach?
Well, that approach, you're going to be waiting for a long time, because with any really good job, the likelihood of it coming just randomly, the HR department contacts you. The best thing is to, like, let's say you're applying someplace, start looking for people that work at that company. And maybe on LinkedIn, maybe you're connected to somebody that or maybe somebody is connected to someone in that realm that might be doing hiring or is a higher up at the company. And you reach out and you say, hey, I'm applying for a job at your company. I'd love any insight that you might have. But But waiting until the HR department calls, it's going to be probably a long wait. I mean, some people have extraordinary resumes, but it's a long wait. I've always I do it for jobs that I'm getting as a consultant. I will look for, if I'm in the running for a big consulting gig, I will look at who else do I know at that company? Who else can go in and speak on my behalf? It's the same thing when you're looking for a job. Who can speak on your behalf that knows people that are in that hiring process? And sometimes, even in a lot of times, you have those people in your LinkedIn connections or in your book of connections. And if you don't, it's time to start making those on LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's very helpful advice. And definitely submitting resumes blindly. These days we have software that just filters out candidates based on the content in their resume. So some of the things that I advise people is trying to make establish a connection with folks in your dream company or a dream job, and then try to set up informational interviews with people so that you get a sense of a day in the life of that person, and you are better prepared for the interview process for applying for that job. Now there are so many things I wanted to ask you. So let's go back to your specialty as a public relations person, a marketer. So what's your advice to folks who are trying to jump the ladder, who are trying to explore other careers? Is there something in today's world of social media that they could do while utilizing building their network in terms of the PR skills to take advantage of?
Well, I'm going to say one thing before that, because I just thought of this. And when you're looking to really jump to another level, to another career, to something totally outside of what you've been doing, an amazingly great book to read is called Smart Cuts. I have read the book. I've listened to it. It gives you ideas to shortcut what might be that process of going from here to over here. How do you do that? How do people do that? And this book is really great. And like I said, I've read it, and then I've also listened to it, and I probably will listen to it again because it's just an amazing book about how people can not wait forever to find success, but work really hard and work really smart and be able to do some of that. So I don't think I really answered your question, but smart cuts.
No, yeah, that's very helpful. By the way, I hope the writer Shane Snow of Smart Cuts would be featured on this podcast someday. I have reached out to his team, and in fact, that's one of my favorite books. If someone has not read it, I'm looking at my notes here. The book says How Hackers, Innovators, and Icons Accelerate Success, and I love that book, and that's like my Bible too. I go back and listen to read it all the time. So thanks for that suggestion. Now going back to my question, which was more about utilizing self promotion or marketing skills to land your dream job. What's your advice to folks on that?
Well, I think if you want to get noticed in some place where you're not noticed at all, beyond all the strategies that Shane has in his book, take a look at how would I get someone's attention? And I've had this done to me where someone has written a press release about them getting hired at my firm. And it was like a real press release. And here's the thing, we hire writers. We hire writers that write press releases. So they're actually showing me how good they are at writing. So sending me a press release, sending, a little short video or doing something like that. You say, well, that'd be really taking a chance to do something like that. Why not? Again, why not be fearless? What are you going to lose, right? You don't have the job anyways. And, if you're appropriate, you're never going to burn a bridge, but you might get someone to pay attention to you. So think about ways to use that. But beyond just doing something that's sort of gimmicky like that, just making sure that you have your LinkedIn profile set up And even, some people will create their own web page for, their writing or whatever it might be. But make sure that your LinkedIn profile speaks to your value proposition for the job that you want. And it makes a big difference. People look at LinkedIn all the time, and one of the best ways to market yourself is to have a good profile.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Now, you mentioned something about this person who wrote a mock PR for getting hired in your company. So my other question actually I had on my list was in terms of volunteer experience. A lot of people, and again, this is old school versus new school. I advise a lot of people who are looking at a job change or who are looking for a job due to the pandemic. I always advise them to look for some volunteer experience. One of the guests also suggested these days there are sites that promote volunteer work, especially for folks who are non-technical and they are trying to get into technical field. There are free gigs where they can go in and join a community, learn hands-on, learn from them, and that can help in terms of their resume building. So what's your take on that, signing up for a volunteer experience?
Oh, I think that's wonderful. One of the things that I advise people to do if they want to get, like, let's say somebody is in sales and they want to get into digital marketing, for instance. Maybe they want to be a social media marketing manager. That's kind of a jump. Like, that's not exactly the right thing. I would suggest getting a digital marketing or a social media marketing certificate online. Now, sometimes those take 6 hours, sometimes they take 10 hours, sometimes they take 50 hours. I have a lot of my students take the content marketing certification from HubSpot, and it's a lot of work to take that certification, but then you can put it on your resume and say, hey, listen, I may have been doing something else, but I'm certified in this and I've done the work. And so I think the point is, from what you said and the press release and the getting certified in whatever skill that you want, and sometimes you can get certified for free and sometimes it costs a little bit, but it shows that you can do that work. And that's one of the things, if you're jumping careers, changing careers drastically, people will say, well, you've never done this before. Yes, but I do have some skill. And in marketing, we do that a lot with marketing simulations, but live simulations, like, okay, so here's the problem that this business has. What's the solution that you would put forth for this? And we have people doing that all the time to show that they've got some marketing knowledge and some creativity. And, sometimes it's done in the interview process, but what if you just did that before the interview process and showed them the kind of skills that you have in that area?
Yeah, yeah, that's very helpful. Now, switching gears here, moving on to the post pandemic world. This month's Harvard Business Review also has their core research on work from anywhere trend, and they say that WFA is here to stay. So I know you work closely with financial services industry, and I'm sure with your students. Just want to hear from you, what according to you is the future of work, the impact of pandemic on the way we work. What are the new trends? What do you think is really to keep track of?
Yeah, so we actually just finished the fourth round of research in the financial services industry to find out what financial advisors, financial professionals are doing within their offices. Are you in the office? Are you not in the office? Are you planning to come back in the office? If so, when? Is your whole team back in the office? When will the whole team be back in the office? And it looks like that the trend is going to continue, at least in the financial services industry, throughout 2021, where advisors have come up with solutions for having their team work at home, having hybrid situations, maybe working Monday and Wednesday in the office and the other days at home. But it is something that's going to stay. And the hybrid, what we saw in our survey, in fact, this last one that we just did last week, is that this hybrid model or the model of working at home is here to stay for some time. And so I don't know that businesses are necessarily saying that they're getting rid of their office space, but some of them are downsizing their office space. Some of them are upgrading their office space because now there's office space that's available and they can get better office space for the same price. But what we're seeing is that this is going to be different for a while. And in some big cities, I mean, I think it's great because if you live in New York City, for instance, and you've got to commute to get to work, commuting to work 2 days a week is a lot better than 5 days a week. And so, we ask questions in our survey about, do you think your team is more productive when they're working at home? And it was still kind of inconclusive. It was about we think they are more productive, but it was at 60%. It wasn't higher than that. So they're not quite sure that people are working productively, but I think that's something that we're going to figure out over the next several months and see whether this is actually something that will stay. But I personally think, I live in Chicago. It's going to start snowing pretty soon. If I didn't have family around here, I would go someplace else. I don't need to be in Chicago where it snows. I could be someplace. I could be the Dominican Republic. I could be any place. But I think that it's something that is going to change, and I think it gives a lot of flexibility to employees as well. But it also is a detriment in that you may not be going in for a face-to-face interview. Well, what if you're used to doing that? You've got to get really good at doing this kind of stuff, which is the video stuff, which we're all trying to figure out still now. With the Zoom, it's been 10 months and we're still trying to figure it out.
This is very good. You gave me so many things to talk about here. uh, Now, yes, definitely, work from anywhere, work from home is, I personally think it's here to stay. And this is something which is very strange, which I have noticed, the virtual interview. And I'm very surprised that folks, I used to think that at a particular job level you might be able to hire people doing virtual interviews. Now I notice, irrespective of the job level, irrespective, if even if it's a senior executive, I know a lot of senior executives are moving from one company to another using this virtual interactions. So virtual is definitely here to stay, and I think it really improves the quality of life for all of us. Now, in terms of folks who have been in careers going to an office, like let's say a bank teller, or someone who works in the food industry, what according to you are the skills required, or maybe they can utilize this time to harness some of the skills or reskill them in those areas that can help them join the future of work, these
Yeah,
future
I think
jobs.
to look at what the skill sets are. If you're a bank teller, you're used to communicating with other people, being effective, being a good listener. Moving into a customer service job would be something that you could say, well, listen, I was a teller, I could do that. If you're a waitress or a waiter, it's the same thing. I mean, it's customer service, it's understanding people, it's thinking about, hey, listen, I was I would get the highest tips from anyone at my restaurant because people would, appreciate the service, the attention that I gave them. I understand that, and I could do it at your company in a different way. I mean, I think it's taking those small skill sets that you might think are small and really understanding them. Like, listen, I did this job. This was not an easy job. I did it in person, and here are the things that I developed. Here are the skills that I developed from doing that. And how do you translate that into something else? Now, I also think it goes back to what we were talking about before. If you want to jump into a different career, it helps to get some kind of training or some kind of an experience. And, we don't really have time necessarily to get an internship like you do when you're in college, but how can you build your skill set? Sometimes it's going to college, and everything's online right now. You can take some classes, and there's actually lots of classes that you can take for free. So, it's finding ways to take the skills that you already have and advance them into the direction of the career that you want to go into.
Yeah, I never thought of this I always think about transferable skills, and this is a very good advice for folks who are non technical, especially folks who come from the food and restaurant industry, like you mentioned. Somebody who was, let's say, a waitress or a waiter, they can always get into the customer service side of the business. And I can tell you, I think customer service has a long way to go. If I call into my bank, the customer representative, they do not provide a consistent service. And if you have been patient and you have been good at a job interacting with customers, I think customer service is the skill, the transferable skill that you can take it further and explore those kind of jobs. Now, and then you mentioned about training. I think, yeah, that's a very good advice. Definitely, we have so many websites offering EDX and others offering free coursework. So if you have time, you can take learn those skills mostly free of cost and try to join some kind of volunteer work to get that exposure. Now, going back to the folks who are impacted by the pandemic, I'm sure you are also, like you mentioned, you hear from your students, you're helping them find internships or find jobs. What is your advice to them in terms of the new world, the post-pandemic world? What are the few things, one or two key things that they can still do, which you think that people are not paying attention to, that they should definitely do those one or two key things?
Well, I mean, for somebody that's coming out of college, the number one most important thing is to have that internship. And sometimes you do it while you're in college, sometimes you do it over the summer. But it's the one thing that I advise because again, it's exactly what we were talking about. You can show somebody how good you are at doing something, and that happens in the internship. Internships often turn into jobs. And I had actually a student email me. She's one of my TAs, and she emailed me yesterday and said, I got this internship, and it was at this company that she really wanted to get an internship at. And she was thrilled because she knows the potential if you get that internship. So you get the internship not for the sake of the internship, but for the sake of the skills and the people that you meet. And one of the things that I advise to students, and I advise to people that are career moving too, is to do those informational interviews. Hey, would you mind if I sat down with you and just talked about what you do in your job? And you go across the company. But if you're an intern, you've kind of got a special place. Like we've decided that we want to mentor you. That's what an intern is, kind of. And so you reach out to different people or ask your boss to maybe make a few connections, and you start reaching out to people. The more people you know, the more people that know you, the better off you're going to be. So I think it's about experience and connections.
Yeah. And what's your advice for folks who have been in the industry for 15, 20, 30 years, and they consider themselves probably too old for trying something new? And when I say this, I always remember the movie The Intern, and where that's how I look at folks who are experienced, that they could definitely try using their skills and their experience helping startups that are trying to build scale up. What's your advice for those experienced or older folks?
So I think, well, I know. I mean, I thought, oh my gosh, I might be too old to go back to school and get a PhD. Are you kidding me? I haven't been to school in 20 years, more than 20 years. And so I think part of it's just mindset. Because if you have the right mindset, you can find the opportunity. So I finally said, you know what? I'm going to do this. When my son goes to college, I'm going to go back to school, and I've got to find a place to go. And yes, I'm old, and this is going to be really hard, but I'm going to do it. And so I think you have to have the right mindset to find what it is, and never think that you're too old. And who cares if they do? But again, if you never take the steps forward, it's never going to happen. And so you take the steps forward. And by the way, at age 50, or whatever, maybe you're 50, maybe you're 60, you still have many years of good work under your belt that you can, from behind and in and forward, that you can do. And so I think that it is, you're never too old to do anything that you really want to do. I mean, I think one of the stories that I heard about being old, I think it was the person who started State Farm. I think it was he was in his mid 40s when he started State Farm. I mean, that's not a time to start a company, is it? But that's the time that he did. And so I think you're never too old to do what you want to do. I think I'll probably work till I'm 75. So I'm just in my second career. I don't even know what it is yet. I think it might just be teaching. But, I mean, you've got a lot of time. So you're never too old to do what you want to do.
Yeah, you are never too old to do what you want to do. Like the founder, Colonel Sanders of KFC, I think he started KFC when he was probably 60 or 70 years old. So, some crazy age. So, to wrap this up, the folks who are watching you on the video podcast or the audio, they are listening to you. If they would like to reach out to you, how should they find you?
So you can go to my website, which is redzonemarketing.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, Maribeth Kuzmeski, Kuzmeski. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. I am on Facebook only personally. I don't do much business stuff on Facebook because most of my clients are financial advisors and they don't happen to be on Facebook. But I'm anywhere that you can search Maribeth Kuzmeski.
Perfect. And then I'll definitely add your coordinates on the show notes as well. Cool. So, Marybeth, we learned so many cool things from you today. And definitely, since now you are part of the community, we hope to bring you back someday again and learn more valuable tips from you. So, thank you for your time today.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Cool. So I'll cut it from here. So what do you think? How did it go?
Yeah, I liked the questions that you asked me, and I think it was better that I didn't know the questions before. So yeah, it worked out.
Yeah, and thank you so much. I was just following your lead. I was taking notes, and these are some things which I write, and I try to actually. These are the questions that I personally want to ask people because these are questions that sometimes you don't know about. Uh,
Yep.
in terms of next steps, I would, if you could share with me a profile picture and a bio that I would like to publish, and that's one. And then second thing is, so hopefully by end of January we'll be releasing the podcast, and my plan is to have an uncut version, more like a teaser I call it, like a 30-second, 40-second of this video recording, which I'll just randomly publish on LinkedIn. I hope you're fine with that. Just like a nugget, like finished recording with Mary Beth, and this is what she had to say, so that people are looking forward to whenever we publish this. They can click and listen to the full interview. So
Yeah,
that's
sounds.
that's yeah. And then yeah, in terms of any referrals you might have or other guests you might think might be good for this podcast, please let me know, because I'm always looking for people who can come forward and inspire others in terms of getting out of their comfort zone and trying out new things to land their dream jobs.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I will think about that. Hope you get Shane Snow on. That would be awesome.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I'm very optimistic I'll get him. So cool. What else? This is done. This is done, and yeah, that's about it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And let's stay in contact. I'll send you my bio, my picture, and anything you need from me, just let me know.
And then when I post it on LinkedIn or release it, I need your help in promoting that.
You got it. Yep, absolutely.
And also, I started a page on Superhuman Project on LinkedIn. So
Mhm.
if you could join that, because I would like to have take this message out to as many people as possible. I'm also reaching out to some of the companies that I know, uh, in like Bank of America is one, and then some IT companies that I know the senior leadership there. I'm trying to figure out a contact who can help us. you know I'm who can help the folks who are impacted by the pandemic in terms
Mhm.
of absorbing them, or maybe reskilling them and giving them a job. So if you have any advice or any lead for me there, let me know.
Okay.
I can, yeah, I can definitely reach out to them by myself. But this is how I am thinking about it. What's your advice for me
Yeah,
there?
no, I think that's good. I think that's definitely good. I'm just going to look you up on LinkedIn here. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've just recently started posting from Superhuman Project page. If you see LinkedIn, so every day I'm trying to post like something so that people can join the community and come to us with the name of the guests they want to hear from,
Yeah.
or if they are looking for a job, come to us so that we can help them with reskilling and position them in front of these companies.
Yep. I think that's great.
Cool. So yeah, please let me know if there is any, since you are an expert on this, please let me know if there is anything I should be doing which I am not doing to promote this.
Okay. Yeah. But I definitely promote it. And yeah, let's just stay in touch.
Yeah. And then is there anything I can do for you?
No, I think this podcast is a great thing you've done for me. So that's awesome.
Perfect. Yeah, because I didn't even know that you are in business development and sales like me. So that's a new thing for me. But definitely, having spent so much time in the IT industry, I have connections in almost any major companies in the US. So if you think that there is a company or a prospect that you're trying to reach out to, please let me know so that I can see in my network who I can introduce you to, who might already be working for that company.
Great. Absolutely.
Cool. Thank you so much, Maribeth, and I'll keep you posted.
All right. Thank you so much. And I will look forward to talking soon.